India. Hello, Mr. Srinivas.
Hello, ma'am. Good morning. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Nice to see you. Hello, Sapna. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning, Srijana. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
All well? How are you doing?
Thank you.
Vishwa, can you make Vachana the panelist also? I think she's joined on the other.
And Ananya ma'am was here and then
That's Sapna.
We joined.
Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Shilpi, would you call Ananya ma'am? I think we saw. Oh, there she is. Okay.
Yeah. I think we're all here, no?
Hello, Srinivas.
Hello. Good to see you, ma'am. Thanks for joining. How are you?
All good. Thank you.
Great. Let me introduce the panelists to each other. So I don't know if some of you might have met with each other in other meetings and stuff. Srijana Garu is GVMC Commissioner. Ananya ma'am, she's been there for quite some time now. And we have Mr. Naik from Surat, Mr. Mahanta from Guwahati. Mr. Naik is in charge of the health and hospitals. Mr. Mahanta is working on all the COVID-related aspects in Guwahati. That's our panel for today. And we basically want to get into how the cities have managed it. And, we've noticed that all of you have found the innovative methods and some really good work has happened. We're trying to bring it all out for the general public. So as you know, Janagraha has been around for about 20 years trying to do urban transformation through citizen participation and all these things. And some of us have worked together also in the past. In Vizag, we have done participatory budgeting. In Cuttack, we work on the Jaga mission. We haven't yet worked with Surat and Guwahati, but hopefully soon. We work with everybody in the sense of Swachh Bharat mission, all cities. That's a pan-India thing. But so that's where we are. Okay, so it's 10:30 and we get started. Let's get started. Vachana?
Yes, Srinivas. A very warm good morning, all of you. My name is Vachana. Welcome to Janagraha's 14th City Politics Conversation, #CitiesFightCovid. #CitiesFightCovid is a series of conversations with the city leaders across India, including city elected representatives, administrators, and civil society organizations to understand how cities have been fighting the pandemic. As we all know, COVID-19 has been primarily an urban battle, with city governments across India stepping up to battle the unprecedented challenge that we have faced in generations. The 74th Constitution Amendment Act decentralized governance and recognized cities as institutions of self-government. However, in practice, our cities are disempowered and are far away from being institutions of self-governance. The experience of cities tackling COVID-19 have been showing us the strength of decentralized and participatory city governance. We heard about Mumbai's ward war rooms, Bengaluru zonal level triage centers and the BL Care platform, Chennai spot triaging, Kerala cities community engagement campaigns and ward level monitoring committees. And the models are not just these. Today we have with us city administrators from 4 heritage cities that came up with innovative and decentralized models to fight COVID. Ms. Ananya Das, IAS, Municipal Commissioner of Cuttack Municipal Corporation. Cuttack, a city of Odisha with over 6 lakhs people, leveraged community leadership of women they already nurtured for various civic programs in the city. Warm welcome, Ms. Das. Dr. Ashish K. Naik, Deputy Commissioner, Health and Hospital, Surat Municipal Corporation. Surat, a city of Gujarat with over 45 lakh people, put in place decentralized surveillance system after the 1994 plague. They rapidly scaled them up and set up mobile clinics in every locality, supported by thousands of surveillance staff. Warm welcome, Dr. Naik.
Thank you.
Mr. Pulak Mahanta, Additional Commissioner, Guwahati Municipal Corporation. Guwahati, the capital city of Assam with a population of over 9 lakhs, activated area sabhas, which is otherwise called as Nagarik Samitis, to engage community leaders in the fight against COVID. Warm welcome, Mr. Mahanta. Ms. Srijana Gumella IAS, Commissioner, Visakhapatnam Municipal Corporation. Visakhapatnam, a city of Andhra Pradesh with over 17 lakh people, leveraged the unique ward volunteer system and implemented sustainability and resilience program under the UNDP at ward level. Warm welcome, Ms. Gumella. A very warm welcome to all those who have joined us today to listen and interact in this conversation. Today's session will be moderated by Srinivas Alavilli and Sapna Karim, Head Civic Participation, Janagraha. The panel will delve upon the key challenges that have been faced in managing the pandemic, the strategies adopted, role of community engagement and decentralized approach, addressing the needs of urban poor, and above all, what does this experience and the learnings from it mean to the future of city governance in India? Let's all remember, the battle is not over yet. The panel discussion will be followed up by an interaction with the audience. We request the audience to post your questions in the Q&A box that you will see on the screen and not that chat box. I welcome all of you once again to Janagraha's 14 City Politics Conversation, hashtag Cities Fight COVID. Over to you, Srinivas and Sapna. Thank you.
Thank you, Vachna, and a very warm welcome to all the commissioners and administrators that are joining us. We are extremely pleased to have a presence of leaders from literally all corners of India, and we're hoping that this will be a great learning experience for all of us and many others that are joining us, including public policy students and enthusiasts and citizens from other cities that are part of the larger city politics forum that we are trying to organized for the last several months. This is the 14th such conversation that is happening. We have had councillors, commissioners, we had citizens, of course, in many of our events from across India. And after a brief break, thanks to the second wave, we are starting again with all of you. And it's a special occasion for all of us at Janagraha too. So thank you so much once again for joining us. And the first question to all of you is really about sharing your experience. It's not really a question, but what are the biggest challenges that you had in your city? India is a diverse city. Every state has their own laws, their own setup. Municipal laws especially vary from state to state, and COVID itself has treated states and cities differently. We didn't have the same kind of issues in every place. While there is a notion of creating a broad brush of how many cases in which city and all of that, we all know very well that that's not what happens on the ground. The main purpose of this conversation is really to understand what were the challenges in your city and what did you do, and what are those, some of them might have worked well, some of them might not have worked well. So think of it as the opening remarks in this conversation, and just here, we would like to hear from each city on what has been your struggle, what has been your challenge, and what has been done to fight that pandemic. So I see Dr. Naik on my screen. So I'll start with you, sir. So if you can give us your opening remarks.
Thank you, Srinivas. Basically, Surat Corporation is a big city with a population around 5 million people. More highest migrant people and migrant labor staying over here. So during first wave, during lockdown, our first challenge was to address these people, because all the people were inclined to go to their native places. At the same time, there was a lockdown was in force. So we have to give them essential amenities. At the same time, we have to provide them the basic health services also. So you rightly said, the basic challenge that we faced during first lockdown was to keep these people calm and cool. At the same time, we need to provide them all the essential facilities and the basic health care. So public-private participation and other NGOs and the industry people came forward, and we provide them basic rationing and everything was provided to them at doorsteps. At the same time, our health department and health team has provided them the basic health services, including testing and the screening. As soon as some trains have started going to their native places, the change challenge came again in a way that there was a big rush and hue and cry for going back to their native places. So we have to manage those outgoing people with our other departments. Intersectoral coordination was taking place with the railway, with our BRTS cells and even ST cells to shift them to the railway stations and provide them the food while they travel. During second wave, there was no outward migration, but at the same time, they are more vulnerable and they are staying in a highly densely populated area. So we have to cater them for their basic need. At the same time, we have to provide them the basic facility of medicines. We need to pursue them. They should not go away. So that challenge was there, and we catered that in a better way. And Surat was the first city that have created a migrant cell. The migrant cell, in collaboration with UMC and some other NGOs, we have established the migrant cells. We are in touch with all the industrialists and the labor group and the unions of them to make them aware about the ongoing facilities and ongoing process that has been taking place in the Surat city. We as a Surat city are basically divided into 8 administrative zones, and accordingly we plan it in absolute decentralized way to the extent that all the activities pertaining to COVID was absolutely decentralized in a way that testing, our basic strategy to tackle the COVID was TTIQ, that is tracking, testing, treatment, isolation and quarantine. So treatment and testing part was catered by the health department of the concerned zone, that is headed by the deputy health officers. The entire war room of the decentralized war rooms has been established, that was headed by the zonal chief of the rank of the deputy municipal commissioner and the city engineers. Field activities were carried out by the rapid response team that have been headed by the faculties of the PSM department of our 2 medical colleges. And isolation and quarantine part was catered by our executive engineers and assistant municipal commissioners. Tracking part was catered by the education department and the vector-borne disease control program department. So in short, we have taken all the departments with together to tackle this COVID pandemic. Dhanvantari placement, when Dhanvantari is also an innovative concept in the government of Gujarat setup. We have one medical officer, one paramedical officer, and a lab technician. So it is a single point single point treatment as well as testing point for the people. So we give the doorstep testing and treatment facility to the.
It's a mobile thing, no, sir? It's a mobile.
Yes, it is basically a mobile.
That means a bus, or what is it?
It is basically we hired our BRTS bus and even Eco and smaller ambulance kind of vehicles. We run around 235 such units. They were placed, their time, place, and movement was placed beforehand to the citizen of the Surat on our web page. For the same prospect, we created a Suraksha Kavach Samiti, that is also a community participation in which we disseminated the information where the Dhanvantari Raths will be placed. So that was also an innovative concept that we incorporated, and we successfully, where we are successful in making it we tested around 31,000 tests per day at one point of time during the second peak. At the same time, positive cases were also challenged because there was a higher number of cases who are being home isolated by the treating physicians and consultants. So we deployed the Sanjeevani Raths. They are catering these positive patients at their home. All medical students of the first, third year and second MBBS were asked to join. They did their splendid job, and almost 3,000 to 4,000 patients were visited by our students per day. around 300 teams were organized, comprising of one medical student and one nursing student, and day-to-day monitoring of these patients were carried out. At the same time, another innovative concept that we have adapted during the first wave, that was of CCIC, that is Community Care Isolation Centers. We found in Surat that there was a hesitancy in some communities regarding admission to the hospitals. They had their own way of thinking. So we were the first to start this community care isolation center, where the community people, community organizers come forward. They created in-house facility of beds. They provide them food. Recreational facility was also being provided there. So it was easy for the people to be there as an indoor patient. So it made it easy for us to isolate them in their own community. So that has also helped us during first wave. During second wave, we intensified and strengthened this activity, and around 572 oxygen beds were created by the PPP model through these NGOs in this CCIC. And nowadays we are using this same setup for our vaccination purpose. So migrant cell, then CCIC, the Dhanvantari Rath, Sanjeevani Rath, and creation of Swachh Suraksha Kavach Samitis are basic innovations that we have done in Surat Municipal Corporation to cater. And we are lucky that we have passed that second phase very quickly. That's all for.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Naik. We will next hear from Ms. Ananya. I think there are very interesting approaches taken with citizen committees and rapid responder teams. So it would be nice to hear from you. Ms. Ananya, over to you next.
Thank you, Sapna. So I would just like to give a brief background of what Cuttack is like. Cuttack is the oldest city of Odisha. It is also the old capital of Odisha. So it has been in continuous habitation for about 1,000 years. And under the British, it served as the seat of the commissionerate. So what we see in Cuttack is a mix of old and new. So we have old Cuttack, which looks much like old Delhi. Small lanes, small by lanes, these areas which are called Sahis locally. So these are localities which have their own democratic setup. They traditionally have their Sahi committees, they have their puja committees, which hold a lot of influence over the area. So when we started out, as Dr. Naik pointed out very well, that the kind of issues which we faced in the first wave and the second wave were very distinct and different. So in the first wave, even we did not know what we were really dealing with. People did not know what we were looking at. So there was a lot of misinformation. Often there was a lot of fear, a lot of taboo around quarantine and isolation. So it was necessary that we take the community in confidence. In the beginning, we were looking at isolating and quarantining those people who were coming from outside. Like Surat was the hub for migrants who were going out. We were receiving the migrants. So we set up these temporary medical camps, which were like quarantine centers, where these migrants would be, they would be housed, they would be fed, they would be taken care of for 14 days. Symptomatic people would be tested and screened and isolated. And this was a huge exercise in itself. Now, the practical problem in such things in an old congested city is invariably our TMCs would be in the middle of the community. There would be a lot of resistance. So we had to take everybody into confidence, the corporators, the ward members, the different local leaders, and then we had to move ahead with the temporary medical camps. Further, the protocols of contact tracing, isolation, these were also new. So when we would go and ask somebody that who all have you met in the last 7 days, they would not answer. And they would feel that if they take somebody's name, that is taboo in itself. So that took a long time to break. Because when somebody from the community is accompanying the health worker, then they seem to open up more. So we activated the ward level committees at every ward, and they were tasked with the job of home quarantine, contact tracing, isolation. They would basically assist our rapid response teams who would be deployed from the control room to cover these cases. So that is what we saw in the first wave. Also in the first wave, we started building up on the healthcare aspect. So unlike a lot of other larger cities, Odisha doesn't have a very large healthcare system. We depend a lot on the governmental healthcare system. So we during the first wave, we entered into PPP agreements with a lot of private hospitals who provided care at the cost and coverage of the state government. So that helped us take care of the bed management aspect. Now, one interesting thing which we observed during the first wave was that in slum areas, we got a lot of cases. So what we saw in Dharavi also in the first wave was an experience which we had here as well. So we already were implementing a program called the Jaga Mission. Srinivas knows about that. So we were already implementing Jaga Mission, where the slum development agencies, the SDAs, they were instrumental in making infrastructure, in forming different civic works in the area. So we roped them in, because you see at that point of time there was a lot of resistance to testing also. So our mobile sampling units would reach the spot, it would reach the containment zone, but people would not come forward. There would be resistance, there could be possible law and order. So at that time we used the leverage of the SDAs, and we tested these slums continuously till we saturated, and we quarantined those people who were isolated those people who were infected, and cleared out one containment zone at a time. We, in fact, now that we look at it, the kind of inroads we made into this particular ward level committee and puja committees and sahi committees, it had a very interesting effect on the concept of ward officer itself. So in Cuttack and in Odisha, the concept of ward officer was relatively new. People did not know what does the ward officer exactly do, because for every dedicated work there is a junior engineer, there is a community organizer, there is a sanitary inspector for dedicated things. So the office of the ward officer itself got great legitimacy through this decentralized model. So that is what we learned. And if I'm to speak of the mistakes which we thought we did in the beginning, since the number of cases were very low in the beginning, we had gone for a very centralized control room. So we would have a lot of rapid response teams. We would get the cases, we would deploy the rapid response teams on the ground. And by the end of the day, they would be very stretched, because they would be covering multiple number of cases across the city. So we realized that we need a model which is more scalable, so that even if we get 1,000 cases, 2,000 cases a day, it would be in the same efficiency level as we do it for 100 cases. So then what we did was, like many other corporations have had ward level war rooms, we went for a PHC level war room. So Cuttack has 59 wards and we have 12 PHCs, primary health centers. Primary health centers have dedicated doctors. They have dedicated staff nurse. So what we did was, we added to their manpower. We gave one additional doctor, one additional paramedic to every PHC, which would serve as their additional COVID manpower. So the procedure which we followed was, every day once we got the master list of cases, we would segregate it through an outbound call center. The outbound call center would call up each person and gauge two things. One, does he need home isolation? Is he mildly symptomatic, or does he need hospitalization? And two, which PHC does he come under? So once that was done, the whole large list was split into 12 lists. Those 12 lists would then be deployed to the 12 PHCs. The 12 PHCs would then undertake the home isolation. For those particular cases which required hospitalization, the control room rapid response teams would be directly deployed with an ambulance to immediately move them. Also, while this is a regular system which comes from the state, and then we receive the list, and that happens in a routine manner, we also have emergency cases where saturation drops very fast, or which require immediate evacuation. So we kept a separate line for that. There was an emergency toll-free number. If at any point of time you're feeling uneasy, you think you need immediate evacuation, you call the emergency toll-free number. The regular control room number is then kept for regular grievances, and your emergency toll-free number is there for your emergency cases which require immediate evacuation. I think that is a very important thing, because often in war rooms and control rooms, we get the complaint that the line is not connecting. that we can't get through. So that is it's a very simple thing, but it's something which helped us segregate the severity of the cases, the severe from the mild. So that helped us. So in all of these interventions, where we are looking at a large city level decentralized model, that is always more effective, I think, from a centralized model. Because you have to think of people as a resource also. If in a centralized system somebody falls sick, your entire we have had situations when the entire control room was positive, so you always have to have backup then. So if you have entirely a centralized system, then there is a possible that the system may fail. So hence decentralization has other by products also which are associated. And community involvement in such cases is very important, is very necessary, because we are looking at massive behavioral change. If the community has to undergo massive behavioral change, if we have to look at removing taboo, then without taking the community into confidence, it is not possible. So that was our takeaway from the first wave. Second wave was more about the other thing. It was about complacency. People had gotten used to living with COVID. They thought it is okay to continue the way they are continuing and living life normally. And as a result, we saw that we got like twice the number of cases in the second wave as compared to the first wave. And so in the second wave, our challenge was also bed management, because the number of cases, the severity of the cases, we saw that young people started getting infected and affected and going to ICU. So we scaled up our healthcare system by leaps and bounds. In fact, we have the largest medical college and hospital in Odisha, SCV Medical College. We dedicated around 800 beds with around 150 ICUs in that college itself. And plus we took up around 12 more hospitals on the private ground with equal number of beds. So that, because Cuttack is also a referral center, we not only receive our patients, we also receive patients from all over coastal Odisha. So we had to prepare with that in mind, not just our cases, but also the other cases of coastal Odisha. So that assessment is very important for any center. So another challenge in the second wave was vaccination. Vaccination was happening parallelly with the regular treatment, isolation, tracing. So we mobilized the community groups again for vaccination, because as you see, we in the CoWIN app, we have an online and an offline system. So in the online system, most people from slum areas, most people from not so privileged backgrounds, they find it difficult to book. As it is, the slots get booked very fast because there's a huge demand for vaccines. So we decided that around 30% of the stock we will keep aside for offline camps, with which we will try to saturate slums and Sahi areas where people are not able to get to the vaccine through the online means. So that generated a lot of goodwill too. Even the puja committees and Sahi committees got a lot of goodwill amongst their community. It was like the final reward for being a part of the entire journey of COVID. So that was a very important and a very good learning experience. Obviously, there are certain challenges as far as the vaccine supply chain is concerned, but given that, this has also been very useful.
Great.
Thank you,
Wonderful,
Ms. Ananya. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Sapna?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So that's that presentation would have easily taken 1 hour, but I appreciate that ma'am explained all that in less than 5 minutes in the interest of time. Thank you, and fascinating. We have so many questions, but we'll wait for the next section of the session to get there. I'll now go to Visakhapatnam, GVMC. I invite Srijana Garu to talk to us about what happened in the beautiful city of Vizag. I say beautiful city, not just because beautiful city, but it's also my hometown. Welcome, ma'am. Your turn.
Hello, everybody. Good morning to all of you. My experience is not very different from what Surat and Cuttack had briefed just now. The only difference being that we have, thankfully, much before COVID hit us, we had the decentralized system of ward secretariats. So earlier, the administrative setup of the corporation is a corporation, and we have 8 zones and 8 zones into 98 wards. But thanks to the intervention of Honorable CM, we have a new system in place in the name of Ward Secretariat, which has 10 officers sitting in the Ward Secretariat. So if we have to say each one ward will be having on an average 5 to 6 ward secretariats. So we have a ward secretariat for a household of about 1,000-1,500 households have a ward secretariat. So that system was in place much before the COVID hit us for the ease of distribution of pensions or our regular municipal services in terms of sanitation or town planning or engineering. All those the setup somehow it's just 6 months before that we had this in place and we were training them to do our regular municipal services. I very distinctly remember in Jan when we had first heard of COVID coming up in China and some students from China coming to India. Uh, there was a discussion at our collector level, and I remember in my own limited knowledge, I said, Abhi, COVID is not there with us. It's still in China. We are only dealing with people who are coming in. We are just testing them, and it's not a big thing. It's okay. I think it's still not a reality to us. So that was my level of understanding at that point in time. And probably we were all in denial that it will not come to us. And just turn of a month by March, we were looking face to face with it. And incidentally, that was March 4th was the first case which was reported in our district in Visakhapatnam, and that was the day I delivered my child also. So maybe I was in that own illusion that this is not coming to me anyways.
I must interrupt you to tell all our participants and those watching live on Facebook and other things that ma'am may not say this, but within 20 days of having the child, she came back to work because she felt that sense of duty and responsibility. Please continue.
Yeah, thank you for that. But the reason that's what I was saying, I was very happily in denial that this is not coming anyways. By March 4th, when I delivered, that is the day when the first case incidentally was reported in the city. So it was not a pre-planned thing or something that I foresaw. But by 10 days of my delivery, I had to take a call if I have to come back or if I have to just allow someone else to take over. But I felt that someone new coming in and taking over from where I left is a little bit of a difficulty because the emergency dawned on us overnight. So it's not something like we had a time to plan or we had a time to breathe even. So I had to take that call, which is a very personal choice, and I felt if that was not the time, then there was no time for me to be there. Anybody could have managed otherwise. So if there was time for all of us to stand up together, it was that time. So I just did my part. So I just gave this brief because the first wave was hit us without knowing where we are going. Even when in terms of testing or in terms of understanding what it is, how is it behaving, we have treated people. Each case was very precious. We had written traces of about 10, 20 people who they would have met, and almost all of them, the primary contacts, secondary contacts, all of them were taken to a hospital and isolated. So we had that luxury in the beginning of the first wave, if I may say, because the cases were only in tens. So April, May pass and the peak hit us around August, September, and we had hundreds and thousands of cases that we had seen in Vizag. So we never had that luxury again to take all the primary contacts also to the hospitals and treat them. So by then we learnt our lessons. So we had activated our ward secretariat teams and put in these protocols how the other cities were doing, either for the containment zones or for the testing teams or the tracing teams or the home isolation monitoring teams. All of them were easy because all these things could be done at the ward secretariat level. And what we had done from the corporation is to, apart from capacity building to them, we had given at least one ambulance and one mobile testing team per ward. I have 98 wards with me. So I have the advantage of 3 medical colleges in the city, both private and government. So I had requested at least the PG students to be given to us. So I could put a ward level team with a doctor, with an ambulance and a ward special officer who could quickly take the list from our central monitoring team where we get about 1,000 cases per day. We quickly divided it into 98 wards, which will average about 10 to 15 cases per ward. They quickly passed on to this ward, the medical officer and the ward special officer, who would further divide it into the ward secretariat. So it was easy. The response time or the turnaround time for us to reach a positive, the moment we know the positive from our testing lab, and the moment it is passed on to the person, the turnaround time from in March, April was about 24 hours. We could bring it down to 4 to 5 hours. All thanks to these ward secretariats that we had. So, and rapid response teams and mobile testing teams were in addition to these ward medical officers, because as Ananya was saying, there would be emergencies which crop in, which will not go in the regular communication channel that we have put in otherwise. So so these ward special teams for regular tracing, testing, and home isolation monitoring, and if they would require hospitalization and ambulance there, and a parallel rapid response team for uh, emergency situations. The first wave we could manage, but this, as Ananya was saying, the second wave is more of our making, more of our complacency. The first wave, we had a very big challenge of communicating to people and telling them the importance of being careful. It took a lot of time. It was more about using our IEC campaigns, using our urban community development self-help groups, and trying to take this message to them that this is very serious business. Let us be very careful. And lockdown helped us. The total lockdown helped us. But in the second wave, we could really not do the complete lockdown. It was always at a different level. So it was a very watered down version of what the first lockdown was. So the challenge was to handle the complacency, but recently when the peak hit again in July, again in April, May, the panic was too much. Again, the panic was too much. This kind of pressure on hospitalization was not there in the first wave. This time the hospitalization was huge, the deaths was huge. So the panic handling was a major thing again. So the past experience helped us. This time we were ready with a little bit of more technological intervention. We had a call center from the state which was given to the uh, districts also. We it's 104, call 104 either for testing. We have a service level agreement that if somebody calls for a testing, we have to test them within 3 hours. And there is that the same number would be used for hospitalization. And once a call is made, we have to hospitalize them and give them a bed within 6 hours. So we had these protocols in place, and during the peak, again, as Ananya was saying, other than just handling the treatment part, testing, treatment, tracing part, we had also the vaccination part. Initially, again, vaccination had a taboo to them. There were minor deaths here and there, and that kind of prejudice was setting in people that they didn't trust the vaccine. So asking them to trust was a challenge in the beginning, but when the peak was reaching, it was imminent on people that vaccination is the only way out. So the peak handling and the vaccination handling were happening at the same time. So there was little bit of drag on the resources that we had. We have to really talk about the resources, because corporation lives on the property tax collections or the resources that we get out of taxes. And this COVID was a drag on them, because people were in trouble. We could really not monitor them, and we could not really pressurize them for collection, but still it is our bounden duty to help them in public health. So it was a drag on the system. It was a drag on the officers, especially in this wave, because of vaccination also, and also the peak which reached suddenly. In the first wave, I would say we had about 2 to 3 months to prepare, but this time the peak just suddenly spurt. So the experience of last time helped us. The only difference I would say from the other cities was our ward secretariat. So our turnaround time and the response time was minimized, and we could reach out to people faster. I have many things to say, but I'll not take much of your time, because it will just be a repetition of what others were saying.
Thank you, Ms. Srijana. That was very insightful. We'll come back to some more questions in the open house. I think we should hear from our additional Commissioner of Guwahati. Mr. Mohanta, can we have you on screen, please?
Sir, you're on
Can
mute.
you unmute yourself, sir?
Basically, the first COVID and last year. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes. We can hear you. Please go ahead.
So some problem. Basically, the thing is like that the problem regarding healthcare facilities. So now the then Honorable Health Minister, Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma, he is now the Honorable Chief Minister of Assam under his able leadership. We have strengthened our health facilities. So as of now, we have 1,000 beds of the ICU bedded in Guwahati. We have a concept of the COVID care centers. As of now, we have 18 numbers of COVID care centers. So health facility, we have increased that level. We can accommodate as much as positive cases found in field. Second thing, for the second time of COVID, we have another problem. There is a protocol fatigue. People are get vaccinated. People they don't want to wear the masks. Now the positivity rate in the month of April is again going high. In that time, we are thinking one things that police level quarantine and surveillance committee we have formed. There is a government SOPs. Government issues an order. We have a 19 number of the police stations where in this committee the incident commander has been appointed as the concerned officer in charge. We have given them 250 numbers of the multi-purpose worker. They are the health worker, our engineers, our sanitations workers. We have divided entire city into 19 parts. What we'll do, we have a 24/7 data center in our offices. Up to 12 midnight, we are receiving the positive data from the health department. Now data team has bifurcated all these data to the 19 teams. Every morning, we have a planning meeting at 10 a.m. positively. Last 2 years, continuously this planning meeting has been in place. Maybe it's 15 August or 20, it does not matter, but we are doing all these planning meetings where all people come in the big halls. We explain them in that planning meeting. We have categorized our goal, what to do in the next day, and next 6 hours, we have contained all positive cases in their houses. There's a mini containment zone, micro containment zone, as we have developed in the government of Assam. Particularly say there's a one positive case, we have contained him by postering a poster containment zone and converted to the containment zone for next 14 days, along with his family. So they cannot come out, they cannot spread their positivity to nearby peoples. Now the race part is that we have a system 104 and a dedicated helpline number. We are calling them twice in a day. We are supplying 2,000 rupees of rations for 14 days. If required, we can provide them more as per government SOPs. We are providing them all medicines. We have a total helpline of the medical doctors health lines. So this is one thing. The surveillance team they are doing, they contain the peoples. Second part they have done the surveillance things. Third, the contact tracings. Contact tracing we are divided into 3 parts of that family. The first of category is that if the husband is positive, this wife, the first category is wife, her children, her drivers, whatever it is. Second category, we go to his offices for his colleagues. Third category, the marketplaces where he often goes for the shoppings. Next very day, in the planning meetings, the surveillance workers, they came to our meetings and they have handed over this data about contact tracings. We have computerized them, and by 11 a.m., we have distributed we have a 180 numbers of the lab techs in the cities. We have distributed them, and they are going for the reswab of that and swab taking things. So the people, positivity rate, they cannot go to the communities. So this is the effort. Second part, government is doing in Assam a lot. We do not have any oxygen problem, but there is a protocol fatigue. People generally jumps to the quarantine things. So we have rejuvenated our Nagarik committee things. We have a 19 number of Nagarik committees in police station wise. What we'll do, our MPWs, the surveillance workers, grassroots level, they have collected each and every committee of the Mohalla, the big flat things, land by land committees, puja committees, Nagarik committees, and we have categorized, we have make a good database in online systems, and we are going to a grassroots level after that. So we have organized the first thing, the senior officer, they have organized Nagarik committee meeting in Thana level. After that Nagarik committee, 2 of them, officer we have deputed and other members, they go to the each and every Mohalla committee, each and every land and by land committee. Now we are in a stage in Guwahati the people's participation is extraordinary. In anything, any appeal of the government, anything, they are coming out. They are coming out to help us. So we had a positivity around 1,600 in the month of April. Now it comes down to around 150 to 200. So this is all about Guwahati. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahanta. Srinu, we can actually proceed on to a couple of questions and then open it up quickly for the Q&A session, given that we are already at 11.
Yeah, so we are a little behind time. What we'll do is we'll frame a question in a way all of you can answer just like you did now. And if you can keep it a little shorter, we can get more in. There were some questions pouring in. Okay, so one thing that we heard repeatedly with, and it's a beautiful country, you hear different names, Sahi committees, Mohalla committees, lane committees, Nagarik Samiti, Ward Secretary, they all, at the end of the day, they all mean one thing, right? How do you engage community into the governance of the city? And Srijana ma'am was talking about the limited resources of city corporations. Ananya ma'am talked about hesitancy in taboo. So there are multiple reasons to involve citizens in fight against COVID or any other work that we do. So what do you think is the larger theme here? You know, the concept of bringing citizens into governance to help the corporation. Is it only something that is limited to pandemic handling? Or do you think that this kind of approach where citizens join hands with the city officials, whether it is the corporation or the local PHC, is that something that you take it as a something that can sustain beyond COVID? What can these citizen committees do to fight the upcoming waves as well as the corporation work that we do? So I'll just start with Dr. Naik. I see him on my screen, and then we go to Mr. Mahanta, and then Srijana ma'am, and then Ananya. Mr. Naik. Sir, unmute, sir.
When Swachh Bharat Mission was launched in 2014 by our Honorable Prime Minister, from that point of time, we have started our Swachhata committees in streets as well in all the Anudan societies. The same concept, our Commissioner sir has basically widened the concept and make a Swachh Suraksha Kavach Samiti. And we bring all the stakeholders of the societies as well as from the commercial and industrial societies also to work together. All the people recognize the importance of being together as a society and to coordinate with the government setup and the corporation setup. So this Swachh Suraksha Kavach Samiti has been formed, and around 500 Swachh Suraksha committees have been formed, and they were their entire business was done on an online system. So that had helped us in a way that we had in our database the persons who are the part of this Swachh Suraksha Kavach Samitis. One person is a nodal for these Swachh Suraksha committees. So if a person in, as far as if you can say that in a commercial area or in textile market, if someone is tested positive or a relative of someone is tested positive, then the nodal person for that Swachh Suraksha committee will inform us through our online portal that someone is positive in that area. So field level activities carried out in those areas. At the same time, these people have helped us in enforcement also. Especially in the textile market and diamond, this Suraksha Kavach Samiti take initiative to enforce the social distancing norms and masking norms, as well as during our testing operations and testing drive, they also come together, come forward and bring the people from their outlets to get them tested. And the same thing that helped us in our vaccination program also. We created vaccination session sites at their occupation site. So they mobilize their workers and their family members to get them vaccinated, so that the vaccine hesitancy that we were observing during initial period that had been that was taken care of by this Swachh Suraksha Kavach Samiti. So unless and until people come together and they don't participate in the public government movement, it would not be possible to come out of such kind of pandemic. So same concept that what we are as I already enumerated, that COVID care isolation center, that also came from the concept of Swachhata Samiti itself. The people themselves come forward, they created their own facility for their own people, and that has basically relieved their apprehension, that have relieved their tension and stress and the hesitancy that not to be tested, not to be get admitted. And once this CCIC has been started, it basically provide facility for isolation. Later on, it provide facility for vaccination. So that is how we bring the people to join our movement to combat COVID.
Great, thank you. So Mahanta.
I really thank Mr. Srinivas for highlighting such important issues. Basically, this is the outcome of the COVID situations. We have able to penetrate the people up to the grassroots level. So taking these opportunities, we have now formed 91 numbers of the land violence committees. They are doing, with the help of them, we are doing now the conservancy works. They are watching the conservancy work our contractors are doing. So Guwahati is now keeping things. Second, they are helping us. This Nagari committee is now this desiltation, because we have some waterlogging problem during the monsoons. They are also doing. And the best things, we have done some 2 massive SCOM, that is anti-spitting operations. And from the yesterday, we have a plan to free Guwahati as a tobacco-free city. So these people, they are helping us a lot. So this is the outcome of this COVID time situations and challenges that we have faced. And apart from that, as Mr. like our Surat, we are taking their help for our vaccinations. We are very happy to inform you that just we are in the end of the vaccinations things. Around 9 lakhs already vaccinated. The other we cannot vaccinate because they are the under 18 years of the time. So this experience that we have gathered in the last COVID fight, this will help in the society also. We have transformed them to helping for the society hand also. That is a great outcome of our last COVID fighting. I'm really thankful to Mr. Srinivas, the new things we have asked. We hope that we'll fight the COVID and we'll contain. We are actually very lucky in Assam. We do not have any oxygen problems. We do not have any now bed problems. We have an oxygen bed available, ICUs, everything. We can fight COVID like anything with the huge people participation in Guwahati. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Srijana Garu.
Yeah, the COVID experience of making it more accessible and participatory to people has helped us do a little bit of calibration in the way we administer things also. Maybe that is what we have learned, and we took your help in that participatory budgeting as well. That we were this participatory approach or making people part of planning. We are taking it forward, not limiting it to public health, as I rightly said, to the budgeting also. And recently, we have opened what development plans, not in terms of only public health again, but also in terms of the amenities and the infrastructure that they would require or they aspire for. So we have opened these public dialogues to various other fields. I would say with due respect to the experience we got from COVID. Because it is giving us dividends, it is really making us to get out of our shackles of the office and think that have this self-righteous approach that we know it better. I think we have grown out of that. We have grown out of being self-righteous. We are actually going to people and finding out solutions also, and having better perspective in the way what the city aspires also. So COVID in a way has changed the way we think. So that's our takeaway, I would say.
Great. Sapna, if you don't have any more questions, we'll go to the audience.
We can hear from Ms. Ananya and then we can.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I completely forgot. Sorry, she's back. Ma'am, please go ahead.
Yeah, no, Srinivas,
This is about the ward committees.
I think the point which has been made by all the administrators on the panel is very valid. When we created those structures, we created them with the aim of dealing with COVID only, but we didn't realize that an unintended consequence of that was the fact that they had gotten very involved in the whole administrative process by then. So we have this scheme called Mukta, or Urban Wage Employment Initiative in Odisha. So there the ward level committees have been instrumental in selection of SHGs, implementation of works. So all these things which are uncharted territories for them, they're doing it now. Even in sanitation monitoring, like in Guwahati, they're doing it for conservancy work. Sanitation monitoring is being done in many wards on a pilot basis by these ward level committees, which is very commendable. Also, one thing is that it led to a lot of communication between us and the medical community. We got to know a lot of things as far as medical management, bed management, medical issues are concerned. So since Cuttack is a medical hub, we made a lot of inroads into that particular aspect, which was a very good learning experience for us also.
Okay. Thank you. Sapna, any final questions? Shall we open it up?
I have one, but I'm also very cognizant of the time. We're at 11:25. So maybe we can take it as closing comments, Sheena, and just open it up now.
Okay. Okay, so let me bring in Dr. Mercy Samuel. Can you please ask your question? Dr. Mercy Samuel is from CEPT Ahmedabad. Ma'am, are you able to turn on your video? And also I request the host to Nisar to turn all the audience into panelists so that we can all see them.
Do you want to go to the next question?
Yeah, we can go to, it looks like.
There, she's just come. She's
okay, great. Go ahead. You're on mute, ma'am.
Thank you for taking up my question. We at CEPT University, we did last semester, we did our service operations studio on COVID management, and that was the first wave when it was happening. So looking at all the discussions that we had at that time and just now with whatever our panelists have mentioned their experiences, one thing is very important, that what is the role of the grassroots communities, and everything emerges from the bottom of the pyramid to up. So we need to have more of a heavily decentralized mechanism of execution. But at the same time, we also realize that a lot of technology is at the moment for managing this COVID. And time and again, I have come across many people like the support staff who come at my home and the ones at the university website पे क्योंकि हमको नहीं समझ में आता है. So they have many such problems, and I have realized that a lot of digital literacy is something that we need to provide to the citizens and also to the corporation employees to adapt to all these tech advancements and how to churn out data from whatever we are capturing through various IoT devices across the cities and through the command control center. So I want to ask the esteemed panelists that is there any kind of a vision or any program in pipeline where they are looking forward for having this kind of a digital literacy campaign between the citizens and the corporation of whatever tech mechanisms are there through websites or through apps? There have been apps for a long time now for grievance redressal and all, but we have found that it hasn't been that much effective. So do they think of coming out with a campaign to involve more citizens into the digital media, because that is the best mechanism to be in connect at the very earliest level? Yeah, thank you.
Did you mean to ask any particular city, or anyone can answer?
No, it is a generic, because I think it applies to all the cities.
So digital literacy.
Anybody can respond.
Yes, community. Anyone want, any of you want to respond?
I could not answer or include it in my introduction about the technology that we had used. You must be knowing that Vizag is a smart city, so we could build a state-of-the-art city operations center, which in normal terms is called a command and communication center. We choose to call it city operations center. So that helped us, actually the technology interventions helped us to know where a certain positive is there, map it on the map, where is the nearby ambulance, where is the nearby health center, and we could also map in the bed availability to it. So even the citizens can just log into the COC website and see if they're a positive, what is the nearest hospital in which they require, if it is an ICU facility or it's just an oxygen bed or just a hospitalization, all that things we could really bring closer to public with the help of smart city. And they could also see the ambulances if they require, where is the ambulance, because all of them had GPS, all of them are integrated, the health facilities and the infrastructure we put in, and the Sachivalaya, for example, the ward secretariat, which is the closest ward secretariat, where is the closest ANM, where is the closest medical officer available, what is the home isolation kit available to them, all of them we could bring in and make use to the people using our smart city initiative of city operations center. We could COVID was one of our chance to bring it more closer to public. Yes, there is still a digital divide which we are trying to handle. Only maybe through these crises that we take these initiatives closer to public, and they're more than willing to adapt to them, because it is the necessity which is again mother of invention. It's like it's a fierce utility. It is necessary for the public to understand, and it is on our responsibility to make it more friendly and take it more closer to public by either in terms of language, or if it is in English, we turn it into Telugu and take it closer to public. So we take that responsibility of bringing technology closer to people, and COVID was our one of our chances to take it further. I hope that answered.
Okay. Dr. Naik, Mr. Mahanta, Ananya ma'am, any of you want to respond to that?
Surat Corporation probably was the first corporation who has started or launched the COVID tracker system in the beginning of the first wave when the foreign travelers started flowing in. So we have tracked them through our COVID digital system. They have to get their selfie post to our central command centers. We were monitoring their movement through our central commanding center, and around 32 FIR were lodged against the defaulters through that mechanism in the initial phase. Later on, this COVID tracker system was adopted by the government of India and government of Gujarat also, and that has been strengthened, intensified, and that has more details we have been added to that system. Later on, the same system we adapted for the our vaccination program, as well as real-time monitoring was carried out about our Dhanvantari Rath placing, where our Sanjeevani Raths were going. Every Sanjeevani Raths been given tablets, so every detail of the positive patients was captured on a real-time basis. So if at all required, some patient requires hospitalization, then immediate RRT team will rush to that place and the patient was admitted. Our surveillance system is also absolutely digitalized. Every health surveillance worker have their own mobile and tablets. So every active and passive surveillance was carried out through this digital system. And we had our Gemini software utilization at the max. All our private
we seem to have lost him. Okay, the way I understood the question, so we'll come to Dr. Naik when he's back again. The way I understood the question is that in the COVID, the fight against COVID, there's a lot of digital stuff that is being done for very good reason. But there's also an issue of inequality and digital illiteracy and all of that. So, yeah. Sorry, are you able to hear us?
Yes.
Okay, please, we couldn't hear you for a few seconds. Please go on.
So later on, this our COVID tracker system was incorporated for this vaccination program also. We scheduled our vaccination sites to that, and we send message and reminders to that also. Our Gemini software was also incorporated with our central command center, where all
Okay, we seem to be losing him. Yeah, so let me ask, so the question was, I think when Ananya ma'am was talking, she was talking about how CoWIN has to be made into an offline mode also. I think the digital literacy gap in digital literacy is the main issue that we are discussing here. So if any of you could respond to that, please, Ananya ma'am or Srijana ma'am, please.
As far as the CoWIN app is concerned, now they have given us the option of going for a 50-50 online-offline system. Right now, the issue is also that the supply is much, much lower than the demand. So the offline mode, when we open it up, we do it on mobilization basis, that pre-identified citizens mobilized by the Sahi committees or the Puja committees and the ward level committees are brought to the center and vaccinated. Because these are the people who do not have access to the online booking system, where you need a fast internet and fast fingers to book your slots. Otherwise, it gets booked in 10 minutes. So that is one challenge.
So it's very innovative solution you seem to have found. Thank you. We'll go to Priyanka Mathur for the next question. Ma'am, please introduce yourself and then ask.
Sure. Thanks, Srini. I just want to congratulate you and Janagra for this fabulous conversation that we've had today. I'm Priyanka. I teach here at Jain University in Bengaluru, and as a professor in politics and public policy. We also just recently had a very good conversation where I brought in people from the civil society, talking about how the civil society responded to the pandemic. And it's so good to hear from each one of you here today. Now, I just want to pose a very simple question to you all. You can answer them individually. Like in the first wave and the second wave, as people on the ground, as the bureaucracy working, what was your one single challenge, which you say was the biggest challenge, and how did you overcome it? And today now, as we are supposed to enter the third wave, what would be the precautions, or what advice would you like to give to everybody? Thank you.
Anyone would like to take that?
I'll just try to put what I understood. The biggest challenge was the information about COVID for us all along. I still think that the treatment protocols that we have today are still going on trial and error basis. Today, remdesivir is allowed. Tomorrow, remdesivir is not allowed. So the kind of treatment, there is a vacuum or stricter protocols on the levels of treatment, which is causing a lot of confusion to the public. That is the biggest challenge that we had. First, of course, knowing the magnitude of the thing in the first wave. Second is about how to treat them. The continued challenge will be the cooperation of the public and people to understand that it is here to stay and we are here to live with it. That somehow maybe out of frustration or out of sheer complacency, I might say that the kind of, or people have really gotten used to living with it in terms of being comfortable with it. I'm really not sure, but the public being careful is still a bigger challenge. It's how we react to it, how seriously we take it. That's how we're going to react to it. So the challenge still remains that we take it seriously and understand that it is still around, and the treatment protocols are still not toughened yet, and we're still going in trial and error basis, and the vaccination is the only thing probably which would protect us to 60-70% at least. Yes. So the challenge still is the knowledge gap that we have in terms of treatment, and the biggest challenge going forward is the public taking it seriously.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. There is an interesting question that is actually been in the media for quite some time, and very confusing at times with different kinds of information coming in. I think we have the absolutely right set of people to actually answer this, and I'm hoping to hear some new insight. This is from an anonymous attendee, so I don't know who to call, so I'll read out the question. Ascertaining the real number of deaths due to COVID is very important to understand the gaps in healthcare system in terms of access and threatening nature of the disease. What measures have been taken to ensure accurate counting of COVID-related deaths? The death numbers have been an issue of controversy. So the municipal corporation is actually maintains the records of the births and deaths, as we all know. So how are you trying to ascertain the accurate numbers? Is that something that you're working on? Is that an issue? If any of you could answer that. I'll go to Mr. Mahanta, sir, in Guwahati. How is the counting, and are there any gaps in the counting?
We have a device. We have a debt accountability committee, debt audit committee, sorry. Basically, you know, sir, generally we are not giving the home isolations to the, in maximum cases. So few cases are in a home isolation, but main cases, the all positive cases, we are bringing them to hospitals. If there is death cases occur, there is a debt audit committee. They have calculated, they have find out the actual whether it is a COVID case or whatever other cases. So we have an accurate figure. Second thing, that if persons dies in a homes, we have a system. Our surveillance worker, they inform us, and we have the already I have mentioned we have some mohallas committees. We have a tie-up with them also. So they inform us. Even we have sent our lab tech to test after the days whether this is a corona case or the COVID case or whatever the other cases. So we have an accurate thing in place in Assam. So we do whatever, there's a no gap between the other dates and the corona dates. We have the accurate numbers of the COVID death in Assam. But some tragedy part is that there's a lot of post-COVID death. That is a different way. That is a prime of concern for us, because there is no any scale, no any measurement to thing.
So there is actually a death audit committee that you have established.
Death audit committee compared to senior doctors.
I see. Okay. Dr. Naik, would you like to chime in on this?
In Surat also, both the government medical college and the senior medical college that is run by the Surat Municipal Corporation have the death audit committee. So every death that has been happening in the civil hospital are being audited by the death audit committee of the GMCS, comprising of the civil superintendent, PSM head of the Department of Medicine and Anesthesiology, and all the deaths that have been happening in the private hospitals and the senior hospitals, they were audited by the death audit committee of the senior hospital. So according to reports of this death audit committee, the numbers were placed to the media and to the government of Gujarat, as well as NHP portal entry was also carried out through that only. And after death audit only, the death have been reported and entry has been done in NHP portal. So there is no discrepancy as far as the Municipal Corporation is concerned regarding death figures.
Okay. Ananya ma'am, Srijana ma'am, would you like to talk about this or any measures being taken in your cities?
I think it's pretty similar. The death audit committee is uniform everywhere. It's the hospitals who give us the list to the central death audit committee at the district level, and then that is communicated to the state level. That is what is followed all across the country, I guess.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions from anyone in the members? I know we are about 10 minutes over it. I appreciate the panelists for staying on for 10 extra minutes. As we know, they're all very busy people running the city. So any final questions? And we also request all of you to turn on your cameras, please, and let us see you. Keep the mask on if you're not by yourself, obviously. But it has been a tradition of city politics to, we miss the physical meeting, so we try to still make the group photo on Zoom. So please turn on your cameras. Any final questions? One question from any of you. I see a lot of young people. Okay, Seema Upadhyay. Yeah, please go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Janagra. And this is a very good consultation which has been organized. And I'm working in advisory group on committee action, which is one of the secretariat for NHM, National Health Mission of Government of India. So we are working on social accountability and trying to, create some platforms and all for community action, basically for health. So this pandemic has posed many challenges, and we were also brainstorming how the urban can be addressed. Okay, so I have a question. since in urban areas we have municipal commissioners here, so how the resident welfare associations or the other the similar bodies which are in the urban areas, how these were involved and how the government could get their support in mobilizing community and observing the COVID appropriate behavior by the community. If someone can throw some light on that, because we are very keen on working on this aspect. So want to understand that.
Srinivas, can I take that question?
Yes, please go ahead.
So we have had a very good experience with the RWAs in Cuttack. So the interaction with the RWA started around the time when we started home quarantining those who were coming from outside. So the RWAs served as people who would look out that whether they are comfortable or not, whether they are breaking the quarantine or not. At the same time, when there are cluster of cases which come out in apartments, we go for a micro containment zone in those apartments. At that time, we liaison with the RWAs for provision of food, for provision of essentials, for any other health-related issues which happen. So that was another interaction level. Further, when it came to vaccination in Cuttack and also in Bhubaneswar in Odisha, we went for decentralized vaccination at RWA levels. So we designated each of those centers as a vaccination center, and we mobilized people from within the apartments for vaccination at those centers. So that has also helped us improve our relationship with the RWAs in the process. Thank you.
I think that's a wonderful theme that has come out throughout this event in all cities, right? The city corporations connecting with citizens coming forward, volunteering to work with the city corporations and government at large and trying to do the best they can. Initially, my own personal experience or observation was that people were very happy to participate in volunteering activities like supplying food or rations to those that are needy. And that was the first wave. But by the time second wave came, I think the active citizens of across cities, and obviously I know more about Bengaluru, but they realized that the only way to fight this is to collaborate with the local government. And that's when all these committees have become active, and you could hear from real stories from the battle front, I can say, if I may use that term, that's how things are working. And it continues with the vaccination now and beyond. So there is nothing like the community power. And I'm super thrilled to hear all these amazing stories from these different cities. And now I invite my colleague Shilpi to formally close the meeting.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Srinivas. First of all, I would like to thank all the 4 panelists for making yourself available today for the conversation. And it was indeed insightful and shows us the learnings the pandemic experience hold for the future of Indian cities, which is to further decentralization. This pandemic being the toughest time for the world, at least in the last 100 years or so, it's giving us various learning opportunities. And the fact that the cities have been constantly learning, unlearning and relearning the various ways to tackle the situation, that is greatly applaudable. But we have to remember the fight is not yet over. And to all the 4 panelists who have joined us today, have been undertaking the fight on behalf of at least 78 lakhs of people from this country. Therefore, thank you once again. And also, I would like to thank all of our wonderful audience and the press for joining us today. A big thanks to the team to bring this event together. Thank you, Srinivas, Sapna, Vachana, Sandhya, Nesara, Mahalakshmi. Also, I would thank Preeti, Prabhat, Prarthana, Namita, and everyone from the Janagra family. Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you so much, all. Thank you very much for joining us. This is a series that we are doing, and this is the first one of the series. So hopefully you'll hear more about it. Those of you that are joining, you'll hear from citizens that have been part of these committees that the commissioners were talking about. So we'll know their experience too in the upcoming event. So we look forward to you joining us in those, and a very big gratitude to all the city administrators, and you can see the kind of sacrifices that they've made, the amount of time they've spent. They were understaffed, underprepared, and the virus has crept up upon us suddenly, and then yet they try to do the best they can and continuing to do the best they can. And the most wonderful thing that we can see from all this is they're trying to establish systems that can continue on. And that is the most interesting thing that has come out of today. And we thank all of them for their service to the nation and to their cities. We appreciate it. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Srinivas.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.